This is the Justicefighter podcast.
Justicefighter podcast.
With attorney Gerald Griggs.
Attorney G.
Where we have conversations on social justice, civil rights, and political news that affects us all.
It affects us all.
Let attorney Griggs put you on game. Only on the Justicefighter podcast, y'all.
What's going on, guys? Attorney Griggs, the Justicefighter. We're here live on Justicefighter podcast. Just want to get back to you guys and give you some information that can help keep you safe, keep you focused, keep you working and having a great perspective, because in this time off, we really need to reconnect with one another. We need to reconnect with facts, not fiction, and we need to make sure that we are ready for the next steps. So again, we're going to talk about some things that are difficult subjects. Many of you are not ready for the shift that's happening in our economy, the shift that's happening in our day-to-day life. And during this COVID-19 break, it's time for us to readjust and focus on what's really important. So I'm going to give you all that information up next on the Justicefighter podcast. Thank you.
This is the Justicefighter podcast.
What's going on, guys? Attorney Griggs, the Justicefighter. And in the midst of all the coronavirus news, we still need to be focused on the census. And as you know, tomorrow is Census Day. And so we need to make sure that we fill out our census application appropriately for each family. And we don't forget that if you don't fill out the census, you will not be counted. So Americans started receiving invitation to respond to the census online, an option never before offered, or by phone on March the 12th, just as the governors and mayors started shutting down businesses and telling people to stay home. While the U.S. Census Bureau has already delaying some of its operations, the U.S. Constitution mandates a decennial census, and it cannot be canceled. Federal law sets tomorrow as Census Day, the date in which the government will try to accurately get a count of the U.S. population as clear as possible. There are certain populations that are already vulnerable to being undercounted in the census, including minorities, immigrants, and the poor. And of course, the coronavirus outbreak will make it even harder, especially if the government has been forced to scale back its critical door-to-door operations to count the people later this year. There is an ongoing push to get people to respond to the census online, and that's the purpose of this conversation. We need to make sure that we get counted. We need to make sure that we respond to the census appropriately. They mailed out the little cards that are coming to you. You can go online and fill out the census, and this is important for the needed resources that are going to come to your community based on the count. The count will determine the number of representatives that you will get in the U.S. Congress, and the count will determine the federal aid that flows down. So it's important to make sure you respond to the United States Census. Again, tomorrow is count day, and we have to make sure that we are counted. So please, please, please make sure you're counted, because it's vastly important for the resources that flow down from the census. So this is Attorney Griggs here on Justicefighter Podcast, Justice Media. We are going to get this information out to you, and we're going to continue our coverage of the coronavirus. But please make sure that you respond to the United States Census, as it's important.
This is the Justicefighter podcast.
What's going on, guys? Attorney Gerald Griggs, the Justicefighter, and we are here with our coronavirus live update, and we have some very, very disturbing numbers, and this is coming from the White House. The White House released models showing the future course of the coronavirus disease, and the CDC is reviewing its guidance on wearing masks, as new data suggests many people with no symptoms are infecting others. President Trump warned a very, very painful 2 weeks ahead, as his medical experts predicted that at least 100,000 American deaths are likely to come from the coronavirus. They actually predicted between 100,000 to 200,000 deaths could come from the coronavirus outbreak. Top government scientists are battling over the coronavirus estimates Tuesday that the deadly pathogen could kill between 100 to 240,000 Americans, in spite of the disruptive social distancing measures that have closed schools, banned large gatherings, limited travel, and forced people to stay in their homes. Dr. Anthony Fauci, the nation's leading infectious disease expert, and Dr. Deborah Birx, who is coordinating the coronavirus response, detailed that grim projection at the White House on Tuesday. calling it our real number, but pledging to do everything to reduce those numbers even further. The conclusions generally match those from similar models by public health researchers around the globe. As dire as the predictions are, Dr. Fauci and Dr. Birx said the number of deaths could be much higher if Americans do not follow the strict guidelines to keep the virus from spreading, and they urge people to take the restrictions seriously. And those are the numbers and the information that's coming from the White House. Between 100 to 240,000 individuals could potentially die from the coronavirus outbreak. We're waiting still on our Georgia numbers, as we do every single night, and I will have those numbers for you in a few minutes. But I want you to take this moment, a brief pause, to take that in. So we're in a serious time here, a serious time of reflection and dedication to our fellow American citizens and our fellow man to do what's necessary to protect them from this pathogen, this global pandemic. And so let's look at the numbers currently coming in from the department on the number of cases of coronavirus in the United States. So now currently the coronavirus globally, 854,307 cases with 42,016 deaths and 176,906 individuals who have recovered. That's for the global picture of the pandemic for the coronavirus. By country, the United States leads the world in the number of coronavirus cases with 185,270 cases. That's up 21,482 cases today. Also picked up 639 new deaths, giving our grand total now almost 4,000 deaths. The total number recovered in the United States is 6,347, and there are 175,000 cases, active cases, with 3,981 in serious condition. That gives a total population per 1 million at 506. So 506 people for every 1 million is infected, and 11 people are dying for every 1 million. The first reported case of coronavirus in the United States was on January the 20th. And as you can see, from January the 20th to now, the curve is rising exponentially. Now let's break it down inside the United States as we wait for the Georgia totals. New York currently leads the country in cases with 75,795 cases. That's up 8,470 cases today, with 208 new deaths today alone. And so New York has 1,550 deaths. Active cases in New York are 69,270. New Jersey is second with 18,696, with 2,060 new cases today alone. Total deaths in New Jersey are 267. Michigan comes in third with 7,615 cases. That's up 1,117 cases, and it's also up 75 new deaths at 259 deaths. Georgia ranks in at number 11 with 3,817 cases, which is up 785 cases and plus 6 deaths. And that was as of the noon announcement. We're still waiting on the 7 o'clock announcement. But again, the numbers are stark and they are shocking. The number of cases that we are continuing to see in America. And with the president of the United States currently at the podium talking about the number of potential deaths, interesting considering that he called it a hoax not more than a month ago, and that we were supposed to have unprecedented testing, but currently there are not enough testing going on. So we're going to continue to stay on top of this here at Justicefighter Podcast. We will be right back with the Georgia numbers so you can know exactly what's happening here in the state of Georgia.
This is the Justicefighter Podcast.
What's going on, y'all? This is Attorney Griggs, the Justicefighter, and the numbers are in for today in Georgia, and we have another day of very stark numbers. So these are the numbers from the Georgia Department of Public Health for March the 31st, 2020 at 7 o'clock. They released the numbers actually at 6:28. And the numbers are 4,117 cases of COVID-19 infections in Georgia. We have 885 individuals that are hospitalized, and we now have 125 deaths. Again, the numbers are 4,117 infections, 885 individuals are hospitalized, so that's 21.5% hospitalization rate and a 3.04 mortality rate with 125 deaths. And this comes as they have tested in the laboratories 14,260 in the commercial labs and 1,921 in the Georgia Public Health Lab for a grand total of about 17,000 tests. That's stark. I mean, it's a little under 17,000, probably about 16,000. And the numbers are consistent. Most effective age group being 18 to 59, it's at 58%, and 60 and over at 35%, 0 to 17 at 1%. And the most affected sex continues to be female at 45% and males at 42%. They have broken down the deaths by each county, and they give the ages. And we have people as young as 29 years old succumbing to this virus, and as old as 98 years old succumbing to this virus. Many of them having pre-existing conditions, but there are quite a few that do not have pre-existing conditions. And as far as county-wide breakdown, we're just going to count the counties that don't have an affected case, and that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19 counties don't have a case, and we have 159 counties. So that should let you know that 140 counties have a coronavirus case. The most affected counties are Fulton County at 599 cases and 18 deaths. Dougherty County, 466 cases and 26 deaths. DeKalb County, 360 cases, 4 deaths. Cobb County, 287 cases, 13 deaths. Gwinnett County, 242 cases and 2 deaths. Bartow County at 137 cases and 3 deaths. Carroll County, 123 cases and 1 death. Clayton County, 112 cases and 3 deaths. Lee County, 90 cases and 7 deaths. Henry County, 86 cases and 2 deaths. Cherokee, 78 cases, 3 deaths. Hall County, 67 cases, no deaths. Clark County, 51 and 5 deaths. Douglas County, 51 and 1 death. Floyd County, 50 and 2 deaths. And Fayette County at 48 cases and 4 deaths. So this just underscores that this is an absolute statewide pandemic, and we need for you to do something for us here at Justice Fighter Podcast. We need you to contact the governor. The governor needs to now issue a complete stay-at-home order for all individuals throughout the state of Georgia as these numbers continue to rise. And Georgia has now jumped from being number 11 to being number 9 in the country. And the deaths, where they were already number 7, I think that these deaths would get them to number 6. So this state is becoming very close to being ground zero in the South, only behind Louisiana and Florida. So we need to take this very seriously. Again, here on Justice Fighter Podcast, we're going to bring you the facts. We're going to bring you the numbers. We're not going to have any spin. We're just going to deal with the hardcore truth. We're going to bring that truth to you. So hopefully you can govern yourself accordingly. Please practice social distancing. Please practice sheltering in place if you can. If you have to work, please go outside with a mask and gloves, as we know that the experts are saying that the most deadly day in Georgia is going to be between April the 22nd and April the 27th, with 84 deaths in that one day. So we need to make sure we are aware of what's happening in real time, and we will bring that to you here on Justice Fighter Podcast. I'm Attorney Griggs, Justice Fighter. Stay safe.
This is the Justice Fighter Podcast.
Justice Fighter Podcast.
With Attorney Gerald Griggs.
Attorney G.
Where we have conversations on social justice, civil rights, and political news that affects us all.
It affects us all.
Let Attorney Griggs put you on game. Only on the Justice Fighter Podcast, y'all.